can get done in this 90 minutes. I'm the Reverend Kelli Clement. I serve two congregations here in the greater metro. I serve the First Unitarian Society of Minneapolis as the Minister of Social Justice and Welcome. And I also serve the St. Croix Unitarian Universalist Fellowship in St. Croix Falls, Wisconsin. I welcome you here to this evening as we discuss moving toward community safety for all in this Zoom presentation sponsored by MUUSJA, the Minnesota Unitarian Universalist Social Justice Alliance. We are so fortunate to have community leaders who are here with us this evening to discuss the question 2 amendment proposal, charter amendment proposal on the Minneapolis ballot that's coming up this November 2nd. I think I'm right about that date. We have Lex Horan from Reclaim the Block, and we have Karina Smith from Yes for Minneapolis. And later during our question and answer period, Jason Soul, community leader and abolitionist and professor at Hamline University, will be joining us. I've asked our presenters to do a little introduction of themselves as we go along. Now I had my notes here handy. Let's see where they went. I will say to you, just a housekeeping note, that we have disabled the chat for people chatting with each other. If you want to put something in the chat, including a question for our presenters, you can, when you chat, that'll come to one of us, either to myself or to Lex, Karina, or one of our tech support team, either Nico or Rebecca, and really grateful for the tech support that we have there. I'd like to start, as we do in our Unitarian Universalist way, with a chalice lighting. And these are the words of Teresa I. Soto in her beautiful book, Spilling the Light. In her poem, Blessed Are the Hungry, she writes, I know that you are hungry for justice, and sometimes when you fail, it feels like the times when you open the refrigerator door, look inside and close it, nothing having met your appetite. But there is always trying again. There is the fact that one just act is the beginning, and together we can build another. The gnawing hunger for a different future is one that we feed in the present. Your diligence, your tenacity, your willingness to learn, not just know, but also do. Hunger shaping how you nourish, feeding one another with the long spoons of your compassion until you're strong enough to feed the part of the world that you can reach. With that, I invite us to be present with open hearts, open minds, and a willingness to learn from folks who are really in the trenches doing this work. I want to say that one of the ways that I make sense of our presentation asking yes for Minneapolis. This is not a pro and con debate, because I have so much to learn. I think many of us have so much to learn. And I thought about, okay, if I was buying a car or a dishwasher, I wouldn't need somebody to come and tell me about the car or dishwasher that I already have. I need to learn about what the change would be. And so it makes sense to me to have time and space to listen to the experts about what the change will be. So all that being said, Lex or Karina, do you have a sense of which of you would like to go first?
Yeah, I think
Shall I go to?
I'll get us started.
Okay, Karina Smith, so delighted to see you. And if you'll give us a little introduction to yourself and then tell us some about your work here.
Absolutely. So hi, everyone. My name's Karina Smith. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the campaign manager for Yes for Minneapolis. My organizing background is rooted within reproductive justice, truly organizing for folks to have and create and sustain their families in safe environments. I'll pass it to you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Karina. Hey, everyone. So good to be with you tonight. My name is Lex Horan. I work at Reclaim the Block. I'm the solidarity organizer there. Yeah, and it's really sweet to be here. I was raised Unitarian Universalist at Unity Church over in St. Paul. I think some of y'all know my older sister, Ashley, from MUUSJA and other UU contexts. And yeah, my work at Reclaim the Block is about sort of supporting our organizing overall, which is about building a Minneapolis where the things that really keep us safe have all of the resources that they need to do that, and where we're moving beyond policing as the single approach to safety in our city. And I work in particular with folks who are like me, from majority white communities, middle and upper class communities that aren't bearing the brunt of some of the harms of the system that we live in now around policing, but know deep in our hearts and in our communities that we also can live in a city that works better for us and for our beloved neighbors who are more directly impacted by the harm of policing. So yeah, excited to be with you all tonight. Karina, I'll pass it back to you to get us started.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So we know that our current system hasn't been working for our communities. We have an armed police model of public safety only. And question 2 actually opens up options to allow us to expand public safety to qualified professionals to actually meet the needs of the city. And we want to have a right-size approach to do that. Currently, we're asking police to do way too many things, to be counselors and social workers and homeless outreach, when in reality, we have qualified professionals who do these jobs and do them well. So we want to integrate them into a comprehensive department. Even for myself, I'm a licensed practical nurse, and there are a number of qualified professionals such as social workers, mental health responders, substance abuse specialists, violence de-escalation experts, who have experience and expertise to better solve problems rather than relying on an armed police-only response. Next slide. And we know that people deserve many things. We are able and deserve to move away from an armed police-only response. We are able and deserve to directly address violence in our communities now, to get to the root of violence and crime by actually decreasing it. There are many factors that are actually relevant to crime and violence, to embrace a holistic model of public safety, to fund, resource, and support trained and qualified professionals. We are able and deserve to have a city-wide representation and accountability with those who protect and serve, which we're going to get into a lot in a little bit. And we deserve to do this in a racially equitable way. Next slide, please. So a little bit about how we got here. It is super important to remember that we are here because we have tried many reforms before. Not only that, we last year witnessed a 9-minute murder, and folks came together across race, income, gender, and ideology and lifted up their voices and said that we need change. And in fact, recognition to make that policy. I'm going to hand it over to you, Lex.
Thank you. I'm struggling to come off mute to jump in. Thank you, Karina. So one of the pieces that we think is so important in Reclaim the Block as part of this coalition is to reflect before this moment at what has happened up until this time, to bring us to this historic moment where there really is this opportunity for transformation, but grounding in what came before. So I think one thing that a lot of folks are learning the history is the history that Minneapolis Police Department is a poster child for reform. So when there are national conversations about the kinds of reforms that need to happen within police departments in order to end police murders and police violence, especially of Black people and Native folks and other folks of color, these are the reforms that have often already been tried within the Minneapolis Police Department. So the Minneapolis police have been trained on de-escalation. They've been trained on implicit bias. They've been trained on how to handle mental health emergencies. Minneapolis police already wear body cameras. There has been a series of different attempts at civilian oversight of MPD. I think there's been 4 or 5 different structures over the last 50 years or so. And each of those kind of one by one has either been totally ineffective, it hasn't actually been able to rein in any police behavior, or when they become too effective, they get dismantled by the police department or the Police Federation over time. The Department of Justice has intervened in Minneapolis in 1993, in 2016, and now again in 2021. We've had a series of police chiefs who have come in promising big reforms, that they will be the ones who will change the culture and practice of MPD. Tony MUUSJA, Janae Harto, Medaria Arredondo, of course, is our current chief. And finally, just to bring in a really kind of fresh example that you've probably seen on mailers coming into your mailbox just this week, Jacob Frey banned the use of no-knock warrants in November 2020. No-knock warrants really gained prominence, or many folks became aware of them for the first time after Breonna Taylor was murdered by police in Louisville, Kentucky, during a no-knock warrant when police just came into her home. And Jacob Frey banned that practice and is campaigning on having banned the practice. But since he banned it, there have been 90 of them authorized in the city. So we just see this disconnect between these promises of reform and what's actually happening with the Minneapolis police in the streets. This reformed police department is the police department that murdered George Floyd. And so we come to this moment in history having tried many different attempts to reform the police and not seeing justice come out of those attempts. So that's one piece of how we got to this moment. And then, of course, the other piece is that after George Floyd was murdered, which was not the first police murder or the last police murder, but it was people took to the streets in this city in a way that we haven't seen in generations and generations. It was truly a multiracial movement of many folks across generations, but it was really especially young Black and Brown people who sort of led the way in the streets in 2020 and created pressure for there to be real change, not just the same kinds of changes that we've seen before that haven't produced real results. And so it's out of like the leadership of that young people's movement and that citywide movement that we got to this moment that we're in today. So we always want to stay grounded in their leadership as well. Pass back to you, Karina.
Thank you, Lex. So a little bit more about who and what is the Yes for Minneapolis Coalition. We are a coalition of residents, small businesses, organizations, educators, survivors, elected officials, and families across the city who are saying yes to creating a safe Minneapolis for all of us. We come together across race, zip code, income, political ideology, generations, and gender. We are Black-led, multi-generational, and multiracial. And we're ready to raise the standard and expand public safety. On this logo here, there's just a handful of organizations who are making this dream a reality. And in the upper corner are a handful of folks who are blocking this from happening. And we'll get more into that in a bit too. Next slide, please. So what does saying yes on question 2 do? It would replace the Minneapolis Police Department with the Department of Public Safety. And the Department of Public Safety will change the current armed police only model to be instead one that is rooted in public health approach, that is both proactive and responsive, that includes a mix of different strategies and types of staff. So again, trained mental health workers, crisis specialists, emergency responders, and police officers. This will actually allow us to have flexibility in staffing and budgeting to meet the city's safety needs. and transparency and accountability with citywide representation. These are benefits that we know that we actually need right now. And for some here, there's hesitation about if it's necessary, and we should be using police in a transparent and accountable way. That's something that even Chief Arredondo says when they get called into situations that they shouldn't be. Next slide. So this current department is actually an anomaly in the sense that it is the only one that stands out as far as the way that our agencies and city departments are structured. So currently we have a department where you have unilateral control that is just given to the mayor over the police chief and over the police department. And what we are suggesting that we change that to actually have transparency and accountability and citywide representation is that the mayor and city council together nominate and appoint an interim director department commissioner for the department who would actually do the day-to-day pieces. And within that we have the full of the Department of Public Safety. Minneapolis has a very stark situation with racial disparities across healthcare, wages, housing, and democracy. A mayor only needs a handful of wards to win their seat, and city council needs to win their whole ward and be accountable to folks in that ward. So a Department of Public Safety that has citywide representation will actually be set up to where the city has a lot more say about what keeps them safe than the current system that funnels to the mayor and police chief. Also, when the mayor has unilateral and complete control, it has siloed a lot of the city from access to decision-making, transparency, and in general, public safety, right? We want to align the Department of Public Safety to be like all other departments. Next slide. And I'll pass it back to you, Lex. Oh, no, actually, this is me. So what does your ballot look like? So we've been talking a lot about question 2. There are also other things on our ballot that are raising the standard of public safety. And we know that it's necessary for people to have housing, right? Folks having a stable place to live now and in the future generations is critical to people feeling safe. Question 1 and 2, the people of Minneapolis put these questions on the ballot through a community and grassroots process. It is just truly time to raise the standard of public safety. And it's time that people have a say for the conditions in which they live and are able to afford where they live. Question 1, which is around mayoral control, was proposed by an unelected body of people. This actually weakens the ability of question 2 and 3 for public safety and rent control to be implemented in the most robust way possible, because it would make all city departments would look like our current Minneapolis Police Department. And it is the only department that has been in national headlines of abuse, mistrust, and sometimes murder. So folks should vote no on that one, and yes on question 2, and yes on question 3. Thank you. Next slide, please. All right, so how will question 2 be put into practice? Next slide. So question 2 is the only concrete plan to actually nominate and appoint the interim Department of Public Safety, a commissioner that will be together with the mayor and the city council in the first 30 days, have a data-driven and community engagement process to actually establish the number and type of qualified professionals that we need, including police officers in the department. It will establish a budget to support those qualified professionals. And while this transition takes place, the police department will continue the day-to-day response and patrol until there is a smooth integration of the police officers from the current MPD fully into the Department of Public Safety. And because of good governance, there is an ordinance in place to retain police response at every stage of the transition that folks can read at the bit.ly that's linked here. If you press that one more time, Lex. And it's really important to know that, again, community engagement and residents that are most impacted, no matter how long it takes, because we know that we can have this, and it gets to move at the pace of the city and what community get to have a say in this. Next slide. So this again is just a visual of what that timeline could look like. all while maintaining a police response. First 30 days, you have a mayor and city council who nominate an interim department commissioner. We have a community engagement process that's evidence-based, it's rooted in data and community engagement. And then you have a comprehensive department that includes qualified professionals that we need, de-escalators, social workers, housing experts, and have a disciplined armed police officers.
Great. Thank you, Karina. I'll take it back from here. So we want to speak a bit to why do we need to change the charter at all? Why go the route of a charter amendment in order to go through this process? So again, just to jump back into the history a bit. So the city charter, I think many of us here know, it's like the constitution of the city of Minneapolis. It sort of sets out the basic infrastructure of our city. What are the departments that we have? What are the real kind of basic outline that then gets filled in by city budgets, filled in by city laws and ordinances that change much more frequently. In the early 60s, the Minneapolis Police Department lobbied to change the charter to cement the power and the budget of the police. They inserted something in the charter that requires a certain number of police officers relative to the population of the city. And that also set up the kind of unique mayoral control system that Corina was just talking about. And so what this did is that it really rigged the rules in favor of the police federation, and it's made it very difficult to make any real significant changes to how the police operate in the city. It really cemented police power into the infrastructure of our city. So as it's written now, the charter forces us into this model where police are really the only kind of like all roads point to the police when it comes to conversations around safety, whether or not that's what we choose as residents of this city. So we're locked into these high police budgets that eat up about a third of our city budget every year. And there's very little space to implement practices that are about prevention or non-police responses. We'll see those tried around the edges, but there's very little money or space to really put them to scale, the scales that we need them at. And so we're doing this work because it's not 1961. This is a different time that we're living in. One would argue that it probably wasn't the right move in the early 60s either, but it's really not what we need in our charter now in 2021 after the 18 months that we've had in the city. The impossible is actually possible. We can make this change. We need to update the charter. And we need to move from a public safety model that's built on this idea that we have a hammer policing, and so every problem in our city is a nail, and we need a much more diverse toolbox that's actually appropriate for the situations that folks are facing on the day-to-day in our city. And I just want to name that this is written this way, right, to protect police power. It's time to move a little bit of the needle away from protecting the police federation in the very sort of infrastructure that shapes our city. So I want to get into this question that I think is burning on a lot of folks' minds. Is this about abolishing the police? So when we talk about this charter amendment, this is about expanding public safety. It's about increasing what we need to keep us safe and using all the tools that include police in this new department. So I want to be crystal clear about that. Our opposition has really been working to plant seeds of fear and disinformation about what this amendment would do. By threatening that police will disappear overnight if we vote yes on this on November 2nd. And it's just not true. As Karina has pointed out, there will be police in the new department for the foreseeable future. There's also, state law and local law that requires that. Again, for better or for worse, right? Different ones of us on this call have different perspectives on the role of police, but that is just what is true in our state and local law. I do want to, though, speak to the broader question here a little bit about this question of, is this about abolishing the police? Because as Karina named, as we got to see that beautiful like rainbow of logos, this is a big tent coalition with many different organizations who are working together to make change in our city around this. And some of the organizations in our coalition, including us at Reclaim the Block, our work is about working towards a long-term transformation to build a society where we don't call on police, don't rely on prisons to manage the social problems that are created by injustice. That's what abolition is, right? And there are some of us who are fighting for that future and will be fighting for it for a long time. There are also others in our coalition who really believe we need police and that we just need to narrow our focus of what we're using police for and have a greater abundance of other options that are more appropriate to what we need in our city. all of us in that coalition, in spite of and alongside some of those kind of long-term vision differences, know that we need a different model than a police-only response, that our city deserves better than the non-safety that MPD has been offering for 150 years. And so we're not afraid to talk about this question. We may not all be precisely on the same page about it, but what we see is needed this year to increase safety is to pass this amendment. And the last piece I want to say as we wrap that up is that all of us know that this is long haul work. When we pass this amendment when is this, 12 days from now, when we win on this, the work is just beginning, right? None of us believes this is the solution that will cure the white supremacy that is part of policing, that will overnight create safety. But we do need to open the door by passing this amendment so that we can dig in for the long haul work of building the department we need, the communities we need, and the power that we need to build a safer city. How do we do it, Karina?
Yes. So just to reiterate again, when you vote yes on question 2, you are expanding public safety so that people of Minneapolis have more of what they need, not less. We have qualified professionals like mental health specialists, substance abuse experts, homeless outreach coordinators, working in a comprehensive department with police who will no longer work in isolation, but instead work to keep each other safe. When you vote yes on question 2, the city's approach to policing and safety will change for the better. Right now, we know that the city expects police officers to be experts in everything, and it's unfair to them and it's unfair to Minneapolis residents. Moving from an armed police-only response, model public safety, has also not kept the people of Minneapolis safe. And every day, we are learning more and more about how prevalent the violence and disregard for human life have been within the department. So voting yes allows for citywide support and oversight for those who protect and serve. There is a concrete way and plan to finally establish some accountability and transparency with a department that has not had that with the residents for over 60 years. If that is something that you are all about, there are tons and tons of ways for the next 12 days to get involved. You can help with door knocking, phone banks, friend banks, and so much more, and you can sign up on our website. And then the next slide is just truly saying thank you for being here to actually get informed on your civic duty when you're voting, to actually find these spaces to ask the questions that you have and be able to get truthful information instead of mis and disinformation. I'll stop there and maybe I'll pass it back to you, Kelli.
Great, thank you. So much appreciate your cogent analysis. I love being in the room with smart people, you know, who do the work and who dig in and who are able to speak to a lot of, you know, different levels of this. We had 2 questions that I want to just ask quickly. Oh, good, Jason is here with us. A question was sent in, do people living in the suburbs vote on these questions? And I think I can say no, this is just on the Minneapolis ballot.
Right. Yep.
Maybe someday you'll get to vote on this question in your suburb. And then another question was, if the slides are available in a document that's available as a PDF or otherwise, because there was a good bit of information and people may want to see those again.
I'm good with that, Karina. Is it okay with you to share?
That's totally fine. I'll also say a similar info session is up on our website as well.
Great, that's great. Let me just, before we get into inviting other folks to ask questions, and someone else, Denise just said it's recorded too, and we will send it out. I think we'll have to decide how we send it out because no one had to register for this call, but I think we'll find ways to make that available. Okay, we are honored to have joining us at this point, Jason Soul, longtime abolitionist and activist leader in the Twin Cities, now a professor at Hamline University. And Jason, as I asked Karina and Lex to do, would you do a little introduction of yourself if you want to say more than that? And then just give us a statement about how this fits into the work that you see and why you're supporting this. You're muted, so we'll need to, I think I may need to unmute you.
Y'all
Hold
muted
on.
me. I was
There
muted.
you go.
Amazing presentation, fam. Like, hey, much love to y'all, man. I love how y'all laid that out. You know, very clear, very, hey, y'all doing it. Y'all know that. So love to y'all. I'm a humble servant. You know, it's like I got two amazing babies that I get to see grow up. You know, they 10 and 14 years old, got an amazing life partner. And it starts at home for me, you know what I mean? I got 3 people to hold me accountable, like out the gate, you know what I'm saying? So when I think about safety, it makes sense to talk it through and do something else. You got to think, MPD used to terrorize me. And I don't say that lightly, you know what I mean? It was sheer terror. When I'm coming out the club, I got to get embarrassed in front of 200 people, thrown on the ground, pepper sprayed. It used to be wild. So, you know, they put on a good face for a lot of people. And then you see George Floyd get killed. And it's like, oh my God, they really that bad? It's like, they've been murderers. Like, they've been throwing us in cages. I've shared a ton of stories in front of a lot of people. So I've had quite the run-ins with MPD, cars taken to the impound lot. 7 of us handcuffed in front of our home on what, 22nd and Aldridge when we lived there over north, handcuffed. 26 in Girard when I lived there, 12 gauge to the face. And they locked up my homegirl Keisha in front of her baby, who was like 2 years old at the time, maybe 3. So for me, man, I just really studied the system and I need to really figure it out. So when I was in prison, I was like, nah, something ain't right, man. It's too many of us who are smart, who got skills. We all like, I was seeing a lot of that in prison. Like, it wasn't what I was being told. Like, I was scared before I ended up in that cage because they said a lot of things about prison. And when I got there, I realized there was a lot of people talking about safety. In prison, you got to talk about safety. You know what I mean? There's no way you can get out of a conversation on safety and accountability. You're not going anywhere. So for me, us having these conversations and really digging in, because my path wasn't meant for me to be able to talk about these from the free world. You know, they was trying to throw us in cages when we were really young out here. I mean, taking us to the library, taking us to the park, just trying to scare us. And when they scare somebody, you know, too much, you saw them turn on their friend or set up their mom or just really evil stuff. So it makes sense to say, yeah, let's think this through. Let's try some things. That's what we do in that rep. You know, we trying to look at our relationships and evolve the possibilities. Like, let's just start there. Like, many of us have amazing relationships. Let's go ahead and like circle that up and keep building on it and keep talking about what accountability looks like. I always say, if you want to hold me accountable, all you got to do is send me a message and say, hey, I don't like what you said. I don't like what you did. I want to bring you in. I want to talk to you about that because it made me feel away. My door is always open for that. Always. I don't want to hurt nobody. So my door is open. I always make that clear. I teach at Hamlin. I've been saying fuck the police for a long time. So to have a university like let me say what I need to say, because they've dragged my life through the mud, had my mama crying a lot of nights on my behalf. Like, it was egregious. Every car I had when I was younger, snatching the tent off them, throwing my clothes in the snow, pissing on my clothes, choking me. I've been through a lot with these cops. So I'm grateful to not get killed by them, man. I've been in high-speed chases with the police. One of them was 52 minutes long. You can look at that appeal online. I'm just grateful because it wasn't meant for us to make it out of that cage and actually do something positive with our lives. They were trying to destroy us. So I don't believe in leaning on the police or a cage to solve the problem. It doesn't work like that. Like, I made a post the other day just saying, when I was 19 years old, I just turned 19. I was in St. Paul, 735 Central Avenue, if you know, for my St. Paul people, like Central and Grotto. I'm at the house. You know, we live 735 Central, so I'm at the house. My friend says, hey, my tape got stuck in the VCR. I need you to come help me. Like, for anybody on here who don't know what a VCR is, it's like how we use tapes with reels inside of them and, you know, watch our film be projected on the screen that way. But we went down there to grab it out, and he had to mess with it and, you know, get it out of there. And it was the Master P. You know, we was all, you know, impressed by the acting and all of that stuff for Master P, because he used actual addicts in his film. like he didn't even make people act. He allowed them to have expression, and it was pretty dope. But when we got the film, we came out and another kid pulled a gun on us, a 357, and it shook us all. We like, what, man? Like, man, we don't want no problems. I don't know what this is. He said, just letting you know, it's our territory. I want you to just empathetically listen to this, because we in the trenches. We trying to figure out a solution so we can get to something better in life, but we not on our best behavior. You know, I'm gonna keep it all the way 100. We not on our best behavior. Like, we selling drugs. People knew that. I've never shied away from that. Dead wrong. If I could go back and change it, I would. I can't, so I do all I can to, you know, give of me to repay my debts to the community, not to any kind of system. He made the initial threat, so now my mind says, I got to get my gun. This guy's tripping. I grab my gun, I go back down the street. It's empty. Everybody's gone. Cool. I go back. I wasn't carrying a gun before this incident. No guns were around me. Like, everybody knows this. The next day, I see one of his friends. I say, hey, man, I need to talk to you, man. He starts running, leaves his girlfriend behind, leaves his partner. I'm standing right next to her. I said, look, I would never harm you, but you need to tell them when you get down there, they weak for the stuff they doing. I say, so if you can pass that message to them, I would really appreciate it. She's scared. She was very scared. It wasn't because of me. It's because her partner ran and left her. So they had an issue to solve. I went back. That day passes. The very next day, I just turned 19. I told her, just turned 19. I'm a kid. Very next day, I come outside, and the guy who pulled the gun out is just sitting on the bench. You put yourself in my shoes. The guy who actually pulled the firearm is just sitting on the bench comfortably. And it threw me off, because I'm like, what the heck are you doing? I said, hey, you think it's okay for you to just sit outside like this? And he said, yeah, you know, I pulled out the gun. You chased my friend. I thought we was even. We had a totally different understanding on community standards. You don't do that to nobody. Pull no firearm out. Not where I'm from. You can't do that. We can't have a safe society if you pulling guns out on everybody. It's not gonna happen. I'm standing where I'm at. They go down to the end of the block. I told them, hey, you got to get out of my sight. I can't look at you. And if any of my friends come, you probably going to get hurt. So I appreciate it if you leave. We trying to work this out. It's very difficult. Serious harm has happened, but we trying. He go in the house. Later that day, they have a meeting at the end of the block, like 50, 60 people. We recognizing cars. We see like different people showing up. It feels like they're about to try to, you know, come move on me and my friends. I got to get my gun again. I get my gun, I put it on my waist. Police swarm me maybe 2 hours later. Take me to jail. When I went to court that Monday, I stayed in jail 3 days. When I went to court on Monday, all they heard was black guy from Chicago, gang member, 9mm. Not that I care about my family, not that I graduated from high school, not that I like nothing positive. So I made bail that Monday. They set a $5,000 bail. I made bail. I'm right back on the street. They didn't do that, like taking me to jail and making me pay bail didn't do anything for the situation. Because when I came out, guess what? I still gotta figure this out. And now I got court on top of it. And now I got a PO investigating my life. How did that help? I mean, like I say, man, I've been through the flames out here, man. Got shot up real bad on University Avenue. I've seen real violence, and now my relationships are solid with them. That means I know something a little different from what people who are advocating for police, like, no, I can't see how somebody would say, we got to keep the police force as we have it. That means you just totally dismissing all the stuff that me and my friends went through. You see, Mayan Burrell just came home, 18 years for something he didn't do. They terrible. So we gotta want something different. When I came home from prison, and I'm jumping around, but I seen slavery, y'all. I'm talking 12.5 cents an hour. Everybody Black on the bus going to the prison. Minneapolis and St. Paul had to ride together to the prison, shackled, wrist, waist to ankles. It was nothing but young Black men. We looking at each other, how much time they give you? 17 years? Damn, you carrying 9? What, you got 4? They said you was doing what? The whole bus ride, and we know we going into like, man, come on, man, we going to prison and we young, 20, 21 years old. We got shot, we've been through trauma, and there was never no love for us. We had to find a way. So you damn right I'm an abolitionist. I see it differently. I studied criminal justice in school so I could know the 4th Amendment, the 13th Amendment, like really 5th Amendment. You like we can like I could talk about amendments that I just needed to know. And I've been like that since I was a kid. Police pulled me over at 15, 16 in Chicago. I would say, please stop harassing us. I live right there, man, just trying to get home. And it will always be a moment of might try and rough us up, might let us go, might just try to embarrass us, make us do something that's just outlandish. So when people want to keep police and hug police, I don't understand that. I came here at 18 years old. In 25 years, most of my life was in jail or on probation out here with them. We're talking about cops, but with a public safety model, like what's being proposed, now you can actually hold the POs accountable because people forget they got the same energy as those cops. Them POs do a lot of, man, they do a lot of egregious stuff, man. I had a PO tell me I needed to stop going to college and just focus on like doing my jail time. I was like, man, I never let you talk that kind of stuff in my life, but they can send me back to a cage. So I've seen the ugliest. Most of my life, I couldn't vote. Felony, so I seen the new Jim Crow. It's terrible out here, man. And the way we've experienced it, man, like my family members, I carried a lot of, caskets in my younger day. The war on drugs really hurt us. My uncle went to prison at 12, came home when he was 18. Some of y'all know that. You expect them to thrive? So yeah, abolitionist frameworks are all in me. I always had to see a way because coming home from prison, they just want you to be like a janitor or work at a meat factory. The stuff they talk about for my life, I was just like, man, y'all got me messed up, man. Like, I'm about to show y'all. So abolition is where it's at. You know what I mean? Like, we can have another world. Go ahead, Kelly.
Jason, I was just going to say thank you so much for sharing this story. It's the layers of these stories are really profound, and for many of us, eye-opening. For a lot of folks who are not, that's not our life experience. It's very eye-opening. So I'm very grateful for your willingness to take us there. And just to clarify for anyone who doesn't know, when you were talking about PO, that's a parole officer, right? I don't know why we.
Or probation,
Yeah.
or like probation officer. It's still an officer.
Probation.
And not only that,
Yeah.
correctional officers, they oversee
Sure.
it. In prison. You can we call them the police too, because they all
Sure.
surveying body.
All part of that carceral system that's just layer on layer on layer.
Absolutely.
I have a few questions that I want to ask any of you that want to take it, but specifics about what are other examples of cities that have moved to this model, other cities that are working in the example of a Department of Public Safety. I know that the Minneapolis charter is different because it names that the police department has to be in at a certain funding level. And St. Paul, for example, doesn't have that. We just have something that's extra. But what are models of cities that are working in ways that are more holistic that you would point to?
Absolutely. And folks, feel free to add on anything that I miss. So actually, I want to first talk about the city charter because it is actually quite different. You essentially have a police federation contract etched into our city charter that was passed in 1961 by that then mayor and police federation. And that's what locks us in the minimum staffing requirement, which mandates that we are essentially spending 35% minimum of our city budget on policing, no matter the transparency, no matter any statistics or measurements of success, no matter any key indexes that we're trying to reach for the city. And that's an issue. Not only that, it's also a barrier, and it's been a barrier for a really long time, as we said, for reform for many folks who have advocated for that, for Chief Arredondo, who has advocated for that. And as folks probably have heard, even our current mayor, Mayor Fry, is in support of the Department of Public Safety and has been in support since last year to remove the minimum requirements because it doesn't make sense to have them there. Examples of other cities that have a Department of Public Safety is Mankato, Bloomington, Richfield. There are a couple others also across the state, and folks across the nation are trying different variations of this because we know the current system of police only is just not working. And folks have tried different variations. Some people also look to Denver, Colorado for their department that they've been implementing.
Yeah, all I would add to that is I think just this like tension with this work around this amendment that we're doing is that this change that we're fighting for, we desperately need to make. And it is in some ways so small, right? Mankato, these other cities in Minnesota, some of them are modeling good practices, some of them are not, but it's just very regular to not have a requirement for a number of police in your city charter, period. So it's such a tiny tweak in some ways. We need to make it if we're going to make these other changes. And I am dreaming of and committing my life to huge transformative changes around safety and policing in this city. And we have to do this one piece. And it's both beautiful to see the movement that's growing up around it, and sometimes a little the sort of hubbub that's being made of normalizing what our city charter looks like when there's so much other work ahead of us, So let's get this done and keep it moving, y'all, because we have a lot ahead of us. And this doesn't need to be such a focal point of controversy, even though our opposition is making it out to be a really radical change.
That's really helpful to hear. I want to say something or ask a question about the opposition, because I know that there are a lot of Black leaders up north in Minneapolis who are against this. And I wonder if you can talk about the generational difference and or what it means for communities that are over policed and underserved to get a hold of the idea of something new. I think there are two questions in there, but however you want to answer that. I think Miriam Kaba talks about that we really need to, and Adrienne Marie Brown talks that we really need to expand our imagination. What could life look like with something different? And so if you could speak to that and also speak to what you see about the generational difference.
All right, I can start and maybe other folks can add in.
Yeah, and I see Jason wants to also, and I'll unmute you too.
Okay, do you want to start, Jason? Yeah.
We definitely got generational differences, you know, like, I mean, I can even go back to when I was 25 organizing out here, like the generation of like, you know, like Black men above me, I never really was trying to like gain approval from that general. I felt like a lot of them let us down after the civil rights movement. So I don't even, no, we was getting thrown in cages and we didn't have any of the like elders or the generation, even in Chicago, where they all got wiped out with the war on drugs. So it's white supremacy that made us like lose so many people. They dropped guns and drugs in our neighborhood. So the generation above me, it's like, yeah, if they rock with me, cool, but I'm not trying to gain no approval from that. I think a lot of them did a lot of that pacifying in their days, and that's why we cleaning up so much stuff now. And we saw that at the 4th precinct. You got to think, I had a lot of arguments front line, you know, about, you know, respecting the space, and you might not like how people showing up, but you definitely you're gonna play your part. So I don't like having controversy like that at all. I've had too much of it in my life, but when it's time to stand up for something important, like I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna lace up. So I think a lot of them just, you know, they get their money and stuff from the police. You go back and do your research and stuff, a lot of them, you know, and some of them some people just really scary too. I mean, some like, I mean, and I know that some people just like really frightened. I know like my sister, I'll be like, man, why don't you chill out sometime? Like breathe, believe in something, like, but don't be just afraid around. So we encouraging people in my work, we encouraging people, think about how many phone calls you really have before you even think about the police. How many people can you call when you're in an unsafe situation and you know they're gonna show up for you? You know, if one person don't answer, the other person gonna answer. Think that through, because believing that, come on, you think about the story. Some people have called and they've waited 27 minutes and they were in a dangerous situation. Think about even thinking about Justine Damon. Called the police because she thought somebody was getting sexually abused and got shot in the stomach. You gotta want something different. You got to. So I mean, like for real, I would lose a lot of energy and a lot of sleep if I cared, but you know what I'm saying? I just really don't. Some people it just take them a little longer to catch on. I got a chance to volunteer for Angela Davis in 2004 in Minneapolis. So that lets you know a little bit about some of the stuff I was getting ready for back then, because some of them just not ready. And for some of them it's political, and I'm just never running for nothing. So I could just keep it thorough.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
I think what I'll add is that, yes, for some people, it is a complex issue, and it is very difficult to envision anything other than the system that we have right now. And unfortunately, for a lot of people, they don't feel safe with the current system that we have. And it's really, you know, a tactic that opposition is using, that folks have used for many, many times, for many, many years, is to divide the community of color, to divide the Black community on issues that we're actually unified in. We are saying that we deserve to be safe. We deserve to call 911 when we're in a crisis and know that the response that we get is not going to harm us. You know, right now, there are people who do not feel safe calling 911, and that is across race, because they're not sure what's going to happen, what's going to be the outcome. And that just isn't the city that people want. And that is shared across age and across generations, is that people know that they want to change, that this current system isn't working.
Thank you.
I think the one thing I'll add to that is just to any other of my fellow white folks who are in the room with me around this. I've just been in so many conversations with other white folks who live in Minneapolis who will say that they're opposing this amendment because, and then they'll name one or two high profile Black people who are opposing the amendment and say, because of that, Black people don't support this amendment, and so I'm not going to support it. And I guess I just want to invite all of us, like, I think, to step into a more mature anti-racism that is growing and evolving and challenging us over time as we learn this work. And that, you know, I think for those of us who live in Minneapolis, which has historically been a majority white city that is becoming more and more multiracial with time, that every single community, there are folks who have different perspectives, period. And having a public conversation where there are different Black folks, different Black leaders who have different perspectives. I think some of us who are white, we haven't seen a whole lot of that happen in public and are disoriented by it. And so I want to challenge folks to really listen to a diversity of voices from, in this moment, we're talking about Black folks who are leading on these issues. Listen to a diversity of voices, get grounded in yourself about what is the vision I want to see for my future and for my family and for the people I love, and be ready for your mind to be changed over and over as we keep understanding more. But to not let yourself or folks in our lives who we hear saying this put forward one or two names as speaking for everybody, when truly these are really complicated issues that we need to carry a lot of humility and a lot of willingness to grow as we wrestle with them.
Oh, I love that, Lex, and I love that call to a more mature anti-racism. And the more we dismantle white supremacy culture within ourselves and the ways we're able to see the destruction that it is wreaking throughout the society, that calls us to that maturity. So I really appreciate that. I want to just invite our participants to, I'm sorry, our audience to chat any questions that you have. That's how we're doing it. Then I and our panel will see them, and I'll kind of feed those to us. We've got about half an hour left. So if you have questions that you want to ask, I want to invite that. I think some of the questions that I'm asking are the ones that we have heard from opposition, and I just want to give you an opportunity to respond, because it's helpful to me to hear, not in a debate format, but what you would have to say to that. And I think the one that shows up for me a lot is that purported, I don't know if Chief Arredondo really said this, but it's purported to say that a commissioner would be supervised by, you know, a dozen people, all of the council and the mayor, and it would be impossible. Can you say something about how that would actually work and how it's workable, that how the commissioner works, and perhaps you can point to some of the other departments, and because obviously it's working in other departments. So if you could say something about that, that would be helpful.
Yeah. So the current Minneapolis Police Department is the only city department with absolute, complete, and unilateral power that goes to the mayor only. And it's the only department that is having, you know, the issues of mistrust and distrust. And we've seen the results of that broken reporting structure from last year, right? And we're seeing that come out every single day, how that was not, you know, how the city and Minneapolis residents should have been treated. The Department of Public Safety would fix this issue so that it has the same reporting structure as every other department in the city, including the fire department, public works, with a department commissioner who is nominated by the mayor and approved by the city council, who is accountable to the entire city, not just a few wards. And this is a solvable problem. It is not 14 bosses, it's citywide representation and accountability, and still written in the charter, if there was to be an emergency within the city, the mayor would assume unilateral control to exercise and be decisive in the event that we have a city crisis. And so other cities, other departments, as I just named, are definitely successful in this structure.
Thank you. That's great. This will be voted on November 2nd. That's election day in Minneapolis. Unless you have a mail-in ballot, an absentee ballot, or you're voting ahead of time, but election day is November 2nd. And we have ranked choice voting, but that doesn't apply to this. This is a straight up yes or no. And is it a simple majority?
Yep, it is a majority of folks who vote on this question, so not turnout, and it doesn't count against us or folks who decide to leave it blank.
Okay, great. So a majority of the people who answer question 2, and again, we're voting yes. Well, you're advocating that we're voting yes on question 2. I'll just tell you, I'm a Minneapolis resident. I'm voting yes on question 2. So I don't want to be cagey, and I'm not pretending to be impartial. How about that? So the question is, can you inform us how on the amendment, the actual police reform is built into it? Is there police reform built into it? We know that police have to respond to certain crimes by state law. Police have to respond to certain crimes. There will be a peace officers who are licensed in Minnesota. What does this amendment do to make them different than how they are now? And what's the interim like?
Yes, I can take this one, and folks feel free to add on. Part of the reform aspect of it is that we are changing the infrastructure of public safety. We are moving away from a police-only model where police work in isolation, where they actually are functioning outside of their full scope. We are saying that the scope of police, we should actually be really mindful about police as a resource and using them when necessary. It should only be when necessary that an armed police officer is showing up for a situation, because it means that that is what's needed, that that is the right response. And so it is actually then allowing for folks to be trained in the response that they need to be in, to be equipped to actually be de-escalatory if needed, but to actually apply the correct response. By also changing the oversight structure, we're allowing for more accountability and transparency. That will allow for the policing structure of this Department of Public Safety to actually be more disciplined than they are currently operating. And then I think another aspect of that is, if this change could happen, being that the mayor currently is for Department of Public Safety, he would have implemented it, right? I think that he would have. And we know that this charter is a barrier to any of these changes that we're asking for. It's actually been a barrier, which is why we're using the charter as the tool to make this change, because that's the issue. And that's, part of the problem is the way that the charter was written and amended in 1961 to actually, implement these issues in there that Chief Arredondo has been advocating to change. He's been trying to change the culture of MPD his entire tenure. And so the charter is an issue. The Police Federation lobbied for the current barriers that are in there, and that's what needs to be changed.
Let me ask this, since you mentioned the Police Federation, a question that I heard was that if part of the goal of this was to break up the Police Federation or reduce the number of police officers, that that might run into labor law, that it might touch on that area. I'm not an expert in that at all, but I wonder if you have something to say about that.
Yes. So because this is changing the container that houses police, again, we're not defunding, we're not abolishing, we're not getting rid of police. We didn't advocate for a minimum or maximum number of officers within the city charter. We are saying we need to expand public safety, and that means that we need the correct amount of police officers based on what the city needs. So it wouldn't be, we wouldn't be firing police officers unless that's, part of the process for rehiring folks within the new Department of Public Safety. But at the end of the day, the process, the transition will be implemented through ordinances by the city council and the mayor. So it will be compliant with all labor laws.
That's helpful to know. Thank you for that. I'm just checking to see if we have any other questions here.
Did you want to add something, Lex?
I was just going to jump in, Kelly, and say, if you don't have more that are coming in, I would love to hear, Jason, if you don't mind, if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit about REP and what y'all are up to, just because I think it's inspiring to hear about other models that are growing like in our soil.
Yeah, so
Go ahead
yeah,
with
yeah,
that, Jason.
yeah. So with REP, we just agreed to a 10-year commitment to co-struggle to figure it out. We training each other on de-escalation, the Guardian laws, cop watch, medic intensive trainings. And we, invested in our own device where we can have our calls, and we'll actually be active again tomorrow. But we found it important just to take breaks and to like know what we can solve for. Right now, up to a domestic dispute, we can handle. But if it's like violence, we just not ready yet. So we just agreeing to co-struggle. It's Susan Raffo, Signe Haraday, Hosina Manu, and Rox Anderson. We co-struggle to like try to figure some of these things out. We not guaranteeing that we will ever be able to solve active violence, but we want to co-struggle to get there. So we trying a lot of things. Our carers go through scenarios. So we see if they ready. You showing up at this apartment, they're gonna be arguing, it's gonna get heated. You gotta intervene and work through it. So as long as we doing that, we know we're giving ourselves a chance to solve for the things that we can. So hopefully we can shrink the departments if that makes people feel better. It can go from 500 to 400 in a year, then 300, but we gotta think like that because police are bad for my health. Like, I got babies. My brother is a dark-skinned Black man with dreads. So it's like, think about my life when you making votes, man. Like, it's real out here. You shouldn't need to see another dead body. We trying to work together to figure it out, because it's like, I would want one of y'all to show up if somebody's trying to call the police on one of my loved ones. I would want one of y'all, not somebody who's trying to just be, aggressive and do all of that stuff, man. I want somebody with a loving heart. So, we at REP, we just say we want to love you to your next step. You call us, we are that breath for you. We the breath to help you really figure out what's your next move. How do we calm you down in the situation down enough so you can make a conscious decision? We're not trying to solve your problems and do all of those things, but it's like, we here. You feel lost, you disoriented, you feel like you're gonna pass out. Okay, we can solve for a lot of those, but a lot of times people would call 911. We saying, call us. You don't gotta worry about nobody showing up with no gun. All we got is a med bag with like Narcan and all kind of flashlights and supplies like that. But you're gonna be like treated properly. We haven't had anybody say we, harm them while we've been showing up, and we hope to keep it that way. But we're experimenting, and we trying things, and we just ask everybody else to try things too. Yeah, but thanks for asking, Lex. Appreciate it.
I love that sense of experimentation, and that's one of the things I've learned from Miriam Kaba about we have to try a lot of things. And I think there's this sense right now with so much in the world falling apart, and it's late stage capitalism and it's white supremacy culture and all of its evil crashing in. It's the pandemic, it's the divisiveness, all of that. And so the notion that we would do something that in our imagination, I think in the imagination of a lot of people, is a huge change. And I appreciate that what you were saying, especially Lex, you said this is an important tweak to the city charter. I think, Karina, I think you said this as well. But our imagination is hampered and we are in this stressful situation. So, oh my gosh, I can't imagine this change. And I think the opposition has done a very good job of capitalizing on that. So Jason, as you were talking about experimenting, that sense that we've got to try a lot of things, and the first thing we try may not work, and it's not working now, right? When we talk about, for folks who are not planning to vote on this, it is essentially a vote for the status quo. Excuse me.
I'm sorry, Kelly, were you basically just offering like, what does it mean if people vote no on this?
Yes, I was just preaching a little bit there, Karina. Come ahead. What do you think? What happens if folks vote no?
You know, I think at the end of the day, again, our vision is that 22,000 people put this amendment on the ballot. We really wouldn't be here if community didn't ask for this change, if community didn't believe that this was in the right direction and part of the solution to offer Minneapolis. And at the end of the day, people get to vote no and they get to vote yes. And, when people go up to that ballot box, it will truly be a question of their values. It'll be a question of, can we align the values of folks who are most impacted by our current safety structure to be aligned in our city, to have values that are rooted in prevention, intervention, public safety, community, right? And so when people vote no, and I think that's something that people should listen to and ask when people are advocating to not vote for this, is what is their plan? What's their plan to make any change when we know we need substantial changes to our current structure? It is not working for everyone. There's not. I haven't heard anything other than maintaining the status quo, other than making a power grab, which is, question one for mayoral control. That is not what we need. And so I think people should really think about what is this opportunity that is a once in a generation opportunity here. And we have urgency behind that. So people should be really clear about what does it mean if you vote no, and what's the cost of that versus this vision for public safety that is expansive, inclusive of qualified professionals that are already doing this work and are really, really good at it.
Thank you. Come on, Lex.
Well, I think y'all have gotten the immense privilege of getting to be in this intimate Zoom room and hear from Karina Smith and Jason Stoll about this. And not everybody in the city has gotten to have this opportunity. And so I think I just want to seize my moment for a little call to action for the next little bit of time of there's been so much fear. It has been a scary time in general for folks, as we've been talking about, for so many different reasons. And then there has been so much fear mongering and disinformation about this. And what it actually takes to reignite our imaginations, like we've been talking about, and give folks just the basic information they need about what this is really about, is these person-to-person conversations. And so I would just encourage folks here in these next 12 days to do one thing that isn't already on your calendar, already in your plan, to help us help us just hit this out of the park so we can move on to the next piece of the work, because we absolutely can do it. And so, I think the biggest need right now is for people to just find a way to have conversations with other Minneapolis voters about this. You can do this whether or not you live in Minneapolis. If you live a suburb or two out and are I want to support this work and learn more, getting out to a door knock or a phone bank. There's fantastic training. They're happening all the time for the next 12 days. Is just there are voters who still don't know there's an election happening, because of how much voter suppression has happened. And so we need to just be talking with people. And I would invite folks to sign up for a shift or two. What I have often done before an election is sign up for my first shift on November 1st. And then I do it and it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. And I'm grumpy I didn't do it earlier in October, so I could maybe do 2 or 3. So I'd suggest, if you have a minute, in the next day or maybe this weekend sometime, to do one shift of talking to voters about this, because now we've gotten the download. And then if you hate it, you're done. And if you love it, you have time to do 1 or 2 more before the election comes up. Yeah, and would just invite folks to turn if you're feeling any energy about this. And if you're feeling bolstered by knowing a little bit more, to get out and put in a little bit of work, because there are leagues of Black organizers who have been pounding the pavement on this and working really hard and could really use a nap. You know what I'm saying? And so jump in, do some work, help us get this done. And then the other thing is if that's not you, if you don't have time, just chip in a little bit to help the work get done. This isn't the only work that needs to happen. Like, also shout out like support reps work, help get behind what they're up to. There's such a beautiful ecosystem of this work happening in this city, but this is a moment to like, we can win this and we need to put in the work to get it done and make it happen. So I'll also drop in I know we're not wrapping up, but I just was inspired for a little call to action. So I'll also drop in my contact information if folks have questions about good ways to plug in this time to come. Thanks for letting me jostle you a little into doing the things.
That's awesome. Thank you, Lex. And I also just put in a link. Plymouth Congregational Church near downtown Minneapolis had really excellent pro and con sessions on all three of the ballot questions. And they're moderated, at least two of them were moderated by Tom Weber. Just really great, just learned a lot. Like I said, I like being in spaces with smart people. And so I learned a lot from both sides, and it helped me come to my decision. So if you're interested in something that is more of a pro-con space, we're not trying to say you can't have that conversation. I think it's really important for folks to suss it out. Check out that link from Plymouth Congregational Church. I want to give our presenters just a moment to do any last questions or last comments that you have. You could also say, what are you doing that's filling up your spirit in this really ridiculously busy time for you? I sort of want to be pastoral to you and know that you are also taking time to, I don't know, pet a dog, harvest your garden. Lex, I'm looking at you. You know, whatever it is that you're doing that's really filling up your cup. And any last statement that you want to share. Karina, do you want to go first there?
Sure. I think that's a lovely question. You know, I think truly what's filling up my cup is having conversations with voters, being able to get out the information. You know, that's part of our duty as a grassroots campaign, is to make sure that we have informed voters going to the ballot this November, and being able to see through our conversations when people actually get the truth, that it clicks for them, that they are so in alignment, that they are so for Department of Public Safety. It makes so much sense. I think that that's definitely what's filling my cup and keeping me going, is that voters are getting informed and they're going to go vote.
Thank you. And I'm so grateful for the work you do for reproductive justice. And I just am very much aware of how this ties together, how it is all so interrelated. So thank you for that work. Jason, what fills up your cup, and what do you want to leave us with?
Just the fact that I'm grateful that we are even here having a discussion. I mean, it's been a long time coming, you know, I was hoping we had these conversations after Jamar. I was hoping we had these conversations after Philando. Like, it was so many people that were getting killed and nobody could push it to get here. So, you know, it's like, shout out to y'all for believing and, like, you know, really taking a second to really think about what you get when you call 911 versus what you get when you actually willing to push for something different. You know, so I'm grateful, you know, that we here. You know, that's what fills me up. Like, I'm excited. You know, I'll be like, a lot of times I'll be quiet. Like, I just be trying to be with my family and take care of people and stuff. But, you know, for these conversations, I'm coming out a little bit more because, you know, I don't like what people are, you know, saying about it. This is the right thing. Don't forget, like, don't ever forget, like, what happened to, he was calling out for his mom, man. I think people forget that kind of stuff. Why would you vote for the status quo? Like, really, put your values on the table. And I feel like that's what I'm doing right now. And I think the other thing that fills me up is, you know, I get to teach at Hamlin, and I talking to those students, and they understanding how important it is for them to figure out their own safety pod. It's really beneficial. When I talk to women at Shakopee, they talk about what they safety pods are like and how they know when to call home and how to share messages, etc. We all need to think that through so that we all equipped if something goes down. So I'm grateful for y'all for being here, but just talking about this fills me up on a daily basis. So thank y'all for showing up, for real.
Thank you. And thank you, Jason, for all of your work and witness, and just really, really glad to have your voice in this conversation. Lex?
Yeah, I think part of what's filling me up is part of it being go time means that also I get to see a lot of people I love who I do this work with, and get to bump into them in the hallway while I'm on the way to grab the yard signs and they're on the way to the meeting, you know. So it's after a lot of time being together mostly like this, I feel really it feels really good to just get to be working together on a thing. And then the other piece is just like seeing, I don't know, it just feels like we're in this time where there's been like a bunch of people grabbed like handfuls of seeds and they just have been scattered everywhere. And some of them are growing up and some of them aren't. And some of them we're going to see start to grow up in 5 years, you know? And I think, yeah, I think like seeing what Rep is up to, and then seeing what folks in my neighborhood are up to, and seeing just like all of these different pieces that are, and then seeing how powerful it is to have this amendment on the ballot. They're all just like different threads, you know, and different plants in an ecosystem, I think. And we don't know which ones are going to be the ones that thrive and the ones that we're like, well, tried that, let's try something else, you know. But that actually feels really like nourishing and hopeful to me, is that yeah, like that we get to learn from every experiment that we're trying right now, and we got some momentum with them.
Thank you. Always grateful to be in a room with you, Lex, and your energy that you bring to this work and any work is it's a balm. So I'm really grateful for that. I want to just tell you presenters that I'm seeing several messages saying how eye-opening this has been, that these presenters are so great, how great we were able to have this. So a lot of love and gratitude coming to you from the folks who have attended. And I just want to say thank you to our audience. Thanks for taking time out when you're zoomed out. I know you're zoomed out, but you took time out tonight. You carved it out to do a good thing and to learn a thing. And so we can keep this going. We can keep this going. I want to close with these words of Adrienne Marie Brown that I just feel like are tattooed on my heart. Things are not getting worse. Things are getting uncovered. Our job is to hold each other close and continue to pull back the veil. Blessings, everyone. Vote no on 1, yes on 2, yes on 3. That's what Karina says we're supposed to do, and I'm going to do what Karina tells me to do. Thank you to MUUSJA. Thank you especially to Denise Conan for all of your leadership, and Bianca Zick, and thanks, really, really grateful for calling us together. And with that, I think we'll say good night.